update.
Live streaming.
Okay. Heard a couple echoes there. So updated the SUSE GNU radio from 3.7 to 3.8. I haven't yet uploaded it to the SUSE repository, but I will. And the drivers for UHD USRP, which is an SDR standard that's currently developing. Had to rebuild those. Well, I had to build them. They weren't included yet in SUSE because they didn't exist when 3.7 did. And also managed to download drivers pushed by a tutorial teacher, Osmon, Osmonn, I believe is his name. So I'm making progress on it. And the thing ideally is supposed to be able to handle any sinusoidally multiplexed radio signaling from 1 to 3.8, from 1 to 3,800 megahertz, which means I should be able to generate AM, FM, Wi-Fi, TV, and lots of, hopefully, amateur QRP signals. Now, as is, this, if anybody's interested, as only a 10 milliwatt transformer, a license isn't required to use this, but, pardon me?
I was going to say, isn't that then going to be fairly short range?
Yes, that's basically arm's length.
Yeah.
A little more than that. But but it can be, I have the, if you know somebody, you can use it for adding a low power. Well, you can use it for things like attaching directly closed circuit to TV and so on, in which case the 10 milliamps is more than ample. 10 milliwatts is more than ample to feed a closed circuit system. And where the things I'm planning on using it for, I do have a radio license to operate on. So, but this hopefully will, my prior radio did not had AM and FM. Well, had FM and transmit and AM FM receive, but didn't have any of the spread spectrum or phase shifting or binary or digital signaling modes that have become much, much more popular in the last 2 decades. And so I'm hoping this will be what I can use to experiment with that, and either use it direct if they come down in price, or replace it with dedicated hardware once I find out what works. So if anybody else wants to experiment with one, let me know. No questions? Okay. By the way, this won't do Bluetooth or GPS, because they're not sinusoidally multiplexed. Oh well. What else did others get? I believe that was what the topic was this morning. What things, what people got for Christmas? Did I lose audio?
No.
Oh, I can still hear you.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's just that exciting a meeting there, Bob.
In what?
It's just that exciting a meeting.
I don't think I got anything technology for Christmas.
Ah. Well, did anybody get any interesting CDs, DVDs? I got a puzzle book based on Sherlock Holmes and a 3D jigsaw puzzle. Actually, my father and I did.
What's the 3D puzzle?
3D jigsaw puzzle is a drawn structure, like a 2D jigsaw puzzle,
Oh yeah,
but
yeah.
instead of it being, pardon me?
What is it of?
Oh, L'Église Notre Dame, the cathedral on the Ile in the center of the Seine, going through Paris. If you remember, it caught fire. I think it was early last year, and they're right now in the midst of doing the reconstruction of it. This time with a metal skeleton. Replacing the buttress and arch structures that have been supporting it. So I presume they're going to put back the pieces of the flying buttresses and so on for historical purpose, but they're going to replace the structural elements with more modern steel structure.
It's funny, my daughter got a 3D puzzle also of Notre Dame.
Ah, okay. Well, I suspect it was popular this year because of what happened last year.
It probably so.
I heard on the radio that place is a hazmat.
It is. There is no question. Half of the materials used in its construction would be grossly illegal today.
Weren't the ceiling tiles lead or something like that?
I think
a lot of the stuff was lead, but I'm trying to remember what else they. There was some other compound that was especially toxic that was in it. But yeah, lead was easily molded. Remember, that thing's, I think, more than 1,000 years old. And it's been built and rebuilt many, many times. Essentially, each generation added pieces to it, put multiple churches inside and chapels, and but it's an amazingly large open area, even by today's standards.
Huh?
Yeah, a lot of the architecture over there is very, very old, and they actually keep them up pretty well usually.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been there?
Yes, I had the good fortune to go there in the 90s. I was traveling to Europe on business, and I had some targets to see on my own. So I paid for deviations, layovers, if you will, in Paris, Amsterdam. I didn't get to Rome. And in fact, I got lucky. I even was able to attend Pascal Mass on L'Église Notre Dame. I happened to be there over Easter, and that was very interesting.
When we went to Paris a couple of years ago, we went up into the two towers on either side in the front to get to the bells. And the remarkable thing is it's a spiral staircase and it's stone, but it's so worn down. All of the steps were like divots. It was just incredible.
And I'll bet there
hundreds of years of people walking up it. Yeah.
And I'll bet their shapes matched a Gaussian curve rather precisely. It's one of the classic experiments that since people's footfalls tend to be random, you tend to wear either one or two neighboring Gaussian curves into steps. Yeah, when I was there, I only had access to the floor, but I got to walk around the perimeter, see what was in a lot of the apses, and then the church in the center was actually where they had mass. Fortunately, I was able to convince them that I could attend.
Today I'm
wasn't-
Catholic.
Pardon me?
Today I'm French Catholic.
Yeah.
Noticing two new names, RFL and Thad. Welcome, y'all. I don't know if you've been here before, but if you haven't, then welcome. And tonight we don't really have much of an agenda per se, because I guess that's probably my fault. But Ben did say that he could show us how to harden Linux. But otherwise, I was just thinking maybe we could just hang out and see if anybody's had any problems or any questions or just want to talk. And how was your Christmas? What do you think of CentOS? I was just kind of it's fun to do this every once in a while. What are you working on? How's your job? What's cool? What's your project at home? Something like that. So feel free at any time, chime in.
I failed to. I regret the loss of CentOS. I used that for business and was hoping to. I was considering replacing my SUSE with it last year, 2 years ago, when it was having its difficulties. So I'm sorry to see that Red Hat's dropping it.
Well, they're not dropping it. They're just making it. They're doing.
I'm in a meeting.
Stream. So it's going to be changing more frequently. That's right. It's an upstream of RHEL.
I think you drag the mouse up to the top. Yeah, bump the mouse up into the top.
Bump it to the top.
Oh, sorry. I thought I was muted. Sorry.
Well, if y'all want to, we could just have the cameras on and everybody, have like I don't know whatever kind of Zoom meetings y'all are.
I miss the in-person meetings, that's for sure.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead about what you said about CentOS.
Oh, yeah. So they didn't get rid of it. They just changed it from being a downstream of RHEL to being an upstream of RHEL.
Well, it's both ways, I think, right? They're going to be...
Well,
they're going to be looking to get features from CentOS into RHEL like they have been, but also they're going to be like... It's almost like bleeding edge version of RHEL,
right?
Basically.
Which is what everyone's not so happy about, is that it's not stable or whatever, it's not the stability of RHEL. So it's still a random.
Well,
It's
that's actually good for me. When we used it in South Carolina, we were using it because we wanted the bleeding edge features to differentiate our business, and Red Hat was giving us free support and very good support with the CentOS. And of course, what we were of course fixing the stuff so that it became stable enough to go into RHEL.
There you go.
Yeah.
No, I think that was the thing. They're starting to charge for CentOS now if you're using.
Oh, are they?
Yeah. And but I don't use it, so but that's the way I understood it. Yeah, they were charging now for it.
Yeah, they're just bringing it into the enterprise umbrella. So
yeah,
the whole support thing, they're adding that in there. But I heard also they're making some like education and developer versions that are going to be essentially free with low tier, like super low tier support from them, so they can still add it into their enterprise stuff. But it can still be like free, and you get a little bit of support if you fall into one of those two categories.
Well, I mean, I kind of really thought that this is what would happen whenever Red Hat bought CentOS. It's like, well, all right, so they're either going to kill it or they're going to start charging for it.
Yeah.
Which, why not?
Well, at the time we were using it, you could get it free, but like most of the other distros at that time, you could also get a so-called pro version, meaning you paid for books and discs and very low tier support, which we did. But we got very high-end support from them because they wanted the bleeding edge stuff that we were using. And I assume it eventually got into RHEL, I don't know. But to give you a time scale, the RHEL at that time I think was RHEL 5.
Yeah, so that was probably just before Red Hat bought it, right?
No, I think it was a while ago. When did they buy it? This was around 2008.
I'm thinking they bought them in 2015 or 17.
Okay, and let's see. I was actually there for 3 years or 2 years. So it would have been between 2008 2011.
Okay. Well, it's my understanding most people, a lot of people, were trying to get around having to pay Red Hat for RHEL, but they wanted RHEL, so they were using CentOS, so they don't have to pay for RHEL, because they don't need the special items that RHEL had that CentOS didn't have. So I'm kind of of two minds. It's disappointing, but also it's like, well, if you really want those features, then pay for a license. Pay for the people that are building it, supporting it, and doing all this good stuff for you. It's. But then there's also, you can get Scientific Linux, you can get Oracle Linux, which is also built on RHEL. And then there's two others that have just announced that they were going to start doing.
Rocky Linux was one of them.
Rocky Linux, yes.
Well, that's a fork, right, of CentOS?
Yeah.
Right.
It's an actual fork. And isn't that the guy that's also was one of the main developers or
Yeah, that's my understanding.
CentOS?
Yeah, he was the first developer or something like that, yeah.
Yeah. Forking it and just building Rocky to continue the same kind of model of CentOS.
Now, a couple of years ago, when SUSE fell under Netscape, and unfortunately they mishandled it originally. They got their hand slapped and sort of improved what they were doing. I did look at actually Scientific Linux, which was one of my candidates for the replacement. Problem at the time was the limited, comparatively, set of pre-compiled executables. And I don't mind building my own stuff, but it's worth it to me to get some of the stuff anyway, at least pre-compiled, most of it. So I'll have to look at what the cost of it is. If it's worth the cost, I'll be glad to. I don't mind. I obviously don't mind paying for software that's worth it.
Oh, sorry. I'm sad. I'm just now seeing you saying it's like a rolling release. You're referring to CentOS Stream, I guess. So yeah, it's supposed to be a rolling release.
Oh, that's not a good thing in my experience. I deliberately don't use Leap Frog or whatever SUSE calls their rolling release because they're fine with automatic updates. Are great when they work.
Is it Leap or Tumbleweed?
Tumbleweed, I guess.
Tumbleweed's the rolling.
I think Tumbleweed's the rolling, yeah. But when you get a bad automatic update, either from the legitimate originator, or shall we say from somebody else, they're almost impossible to recover from. So I've had to deal with them over the last 30 years, and I have never used a rolling release when I had the choice because of my experience supporting them. So what about Fedora?
Well, Fedora is still kind of the community, the upstream of all of those, as I understand it. It's the bleeding edge rolling release style, right? Is it? Everyone else understand it that way, or can you explain it better?
I don't think it's rolling release. They still have full versions of release cycles and stuff like that. But I think they're a little bit more desktop focused rather than like server backend.
Gotcha.
CentOS was always kind of like the Ubuntu server, and the Fedora was kind of like the Ubuntu desktop kind of deal.
Right.
The way I saw it, at least.
So the equivalent in SUSE would be OpenSUSE is Fedora, where SUSE /SLES is RHEL.
Yeah.
Or
like that.
Ubuntu server and Ubuntu desktop is Fedora. Is that kind of...
Yeah, but I mean, you're also right with the whole, like, they like to play around a lot more in Fedora than the other ones because people aren't typically running Fedora as a server in production.
Yeah, and it's much more...
Not that they couldn't, but...
The software is much more up to date than you'll find much older versions on RHEL.
Yeah.
But not as ridiculously behind as Debian is in stable.
Okay, well, I got a friend at work who has, quote, been using Linux for years, but I found out he's only been using executables that somebody else selects for him. He's now interested in learning Linux. What recommendations would people have for some of the current online training programs for it? I hadn't checked, like, for instance, does W3C have a set of Linux classes yet?
The only thing I've ever seen from WT3 is on HTML, CSS, JavaScript, the web technologies. I don't think I've seen anything in Linux lately.
I hadn't the last time I checked, but then the last time I checked, they didn't have Python either, and they do now.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they got good Python courses now.
Yeah, well, then it has been a while since I've been on there, so I maybe I'm misspeaking.
Mm-hmm. No, as I said, I didn't know, so I figured I'd ask. And there used to be the Linux documentation project, but that I think sort of died years ago, didn't it? When things like Stack Overflow started up.
What particularly is he looking to learn about Linux? Like,
well, it turns out at this point, go ahead.
I know you said he has some experience for years or something like that, but is he wanting to, like, bash programming in general? Like, what is he wanting to do? Like automation? Okay,
well, it turns out that they had him. Multiple companies would give him a command line to execute that would do something, either textual usually or not, and he would simply execute the command line executable without knowing how it was done or anything, and then carry out whatever the script or instructions that have been written by somebody else. So at this point, I gave him bash crawl to introduce him to the base commands of Linux, like ls, cd, etc. He at this point doesn't know the permission system, didn't know the file system, or even a hierarchical file system. So he's really starting at a low level. So, go ahead.
Was he given access to a remote machine?
Yes, actually, that's what he was using at work. Now, I don't know about before then, but at our work, we don't, for whatever reason, we have no Unix workstations, but we do have and depend on large numbers of Unix servers. So most of what I've been doing is actually using the Windows workstation to remote into the Unix server.
Yeah.
And I've actually had the Unix server provide services that I can that others can then use from their Windows workstations. So that's the way he's been operating at our company.
Interesting.
But that makes him unusual in that at least he's actually used something that he knew wasn't Windows.
Yeah. There's also, and I haven't been on there in a while. I'm actually logging into it right now. But you can get or at least you used to be able to. I don't know if you can still can get a Linux Academy account, and they have some basic stuff about the permission system, creating users, like just some very basic intro stuff, all the way up to you can learn Kubernetes and all this other stuff from them too. So
that's a good idea. I was going to check into them and forgot. That's a really good idea.
Yeah, I've used
a lot of it is paid. Yeah.
I've used Linux Academy in the past. I've liked it. Also, LinkedIn Learning is good. I don't know. It's kind of got some for free and some for not free. I'm also learning on Udemy some stuff, but that's paid for through my company. I don't know if Udemy has anything free, but I really would, maybe scour and just see what all's out there. Heck, just YouTube would have a lot of good stuff too. I mean,
yeah. Well, it's true. Udemy isn't free. We actually have most of us anyway. Have Udemy accounts through the company. We're supposed to actually use them, and I have. I hadn't looked for Linux yet, but there are some limits on it, so it'll depend on what the prices are.
So he has access to that then?
I believe so. I don't know. I know not everybody in the company has access to Udemy, but I know that most of the people I deal with do. And it's as I understand it, the Udemy license is per person, not per company. So the company can pay for it, but the license always goes with the person, as I understand the Udemy's model. And apparently, I'm sorry, go ahead.
They run specials on the courses there sometimes. I bought a lot of them for $10.
That's good to know.
Well, that might be what we get. I don't know. That might. Yeah, I do know I've not seen a bill yet.
Yeah, it looks like Linux Academy still has their community edition available with some of the free courses, and then some courses it looks like, or at least they used to rotate in and out, just depending on.
I've used Linux Academy pretty well for last 2 years. I let it expire just so I could try some other sites like EDX. That's and Coursera. They host a popular Python course that some people claim has changed their lives. On
Coursera, you say?
Coursera, yeah, or the same courses on Coursera and EDX, which is an education-based site.
Yeah, I think like Cornell and IB or MIT and others are on edX.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to take MIT's Intro to Computer Science class up there. Just so, if for no other reason, to learn Scheme. What's the
Scheme
yeah.
is a Lisp.
Lisp.
Yeah, Scheme is GNU's brand, I guess, of Lisp. And by the way, this is the object-oriented, list-structured Lisp, not Common Lisp.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's also a
Apparently,
project
no.
on.
Apparently, nobody's heard of Common Lisp. This is a good thing. Forget I said it.
I've heard of it. I just don't know what it is. Yeah.
Lisp
It
was
was an
the
advertising. Go ahead.
Lisp was a language that was used by Paul Graham to develop the first web-based application for the internet, which eventually became Yahoo Stores, and which got overrun by Amazon. So there you
Yeah,
go.
Lisp was one of the earliest. Lisp was one of the earliest three languages, aside from C and Fortran. Um, if Lisp has a lot of the features that Perl is known for, namely dynamic scoping, uh, innate, let's see, uh, innate object-oriented, um, loose typing, um, what's it called? Not lexical, scope. Can't remember what it's called. Basically, the variable's existence is determined by its creation time and destruction time rather than its lexical scope. But and was very, very successful. But in the 90s, it suffered what was essentially marketing destruction. And it got a very bad name it didn't deserve. And then when Java was attacked, Perl that fell into the vacuum, or was created to fall into the vacuum, depending on your view of history. It actually was hailed for introducing major new features, quote, never before seen in programming before. But in fact, most of them were just a resurrection of the features of Lisp, Franz Lisp. And so Scheme, which was GNU's resurrection, note it doesn't include LISP anywhere in its name, as was also one of the dialects that did well basically by divorcing itself in marketing terms from Lisp.
Well, Ben said that he's ready to talk about server hardening. So, unless anyone has an objection,
I'll shut up.
I'm going to mute and hide, and feel free to take it away.
Okay. So I'm Ben Francis, local Linux nut in Columbia here. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Entire screen. Yeah, that's good. That's fine. Oops. All right. Yeah, there we go. Got to click the picture first. All right. So I don't have slides. I just saw this and thought it might be useful for everybody. So the U.S. Department of Defense has a public DoD cyber exchange at public.cyber.mil, and so they discuss public key infrastructure and enabling. I believe they talk about the free Let's Encrypt project there. There's some other resources about the cyber exchange. Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and they have this Cyber Awareness Challenge 2021 being online. Go back to that. Here it is. And I think anybody can take that and check out your if you want to get your organization up to the DoD standard as far as awareness of how to deal with email phishing and things like that can attack your employees. Then this is a decent resource. But for today, I'm going to talk about SRGs and Stigs. Well, mainly just Stigs. SRGs are more oriented toward applications like Oracle databases, but the Stig is, I'll click on it here, security technical implementation guides. And so what this is all about is server hardening. So your standard Red Hat or Ubuntu server is oriented toward being, easy to install and easy to get up and running. But if you're running a server, you don't want easy. Well, you kind of do, but the extra overhead of having a graphical user interface is not something you want, because on a standard RHEL box with a graphical user interface, you're going to have over 1,200 packages that are installed on the box. Department of Defense uses as their base Linux operating system. Besides, I'm sure they use Windows Server all over the place also. But RHEL is what they like to use and pay for, and so the Security Technical Information Guideline is downloadable, and the way you actually work with it is with a program you can also download called Stig Viewer. And so I am clicking on Stig Viewer. Can you all see this? DISA Stig Viewer 2.11 Stig Explorer. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay.
Can see it, but maybe you can make it a little larger.
Okay. I don't know.
If not, don't worry about it.
Here, let me see. No. I think, let me try Control Plus. Nope. Shift Plus. Nope. Control Shift Plus. Nope. Okay. Well, this is what it looks like. So, and I'll just go through. Let's see. So, so this Red Hat Enterprise Linux Stig is not something super secret or anything. It's public information, and it's published, and you can use it as a guide to harden your Linux servers. And I want to get this thing out of here. How do I? Okay, yeah, that's fine. You can go over there. All right.
Click the word hide.
Okay. All right. We're okay. Here we go. All right. So if you want to take a look at this, just look at the Stig. Then you can use this Stig Explorer, and you check. I've uploaded 2 Stigs here. One for an application, and one for Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7. And so I go ahead and click the box there, and the Stig shows up with a vulnerability ID and a rule name. So just out of the box, you got see this down here, 245 things that are vulnerable about this RHEL 7 server. So these things have to be addressed, and your organization, whether it knows it or not, is accepting risk just by using Milli Vanilli rel. And so you may not want to do that if you're a security conscious organization and don't want to get your customers' info splattered all over the web. So the thing you would do is look at every one of these. Well, let's just take the first one right here. Vulnerability ID 204392, and you would just highlight it, and it shows up in the right hand side. It's got it's got a header right here of this is Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7 Stig version 3 release 1, released 23 October, just a couple months ago. And every vulnerability has a vulnerability ID. This is 204392, and then you got a rule ID and a Stig ID, and a severity level. Category 1 is the worst. So this is if your server fails its check, then the highest you can get. Oh, can y'all still hear me? I lost my VPN there.
Still
We
hear you.
can hear you.
Okay, all right. Didn't need it anyway. So, and the classification is unclassified. That's good. And then it also has some legacy IDs. So anyway, it has a group title. I haven't messed with that at all. But the rule title is the Red Hat Linux operating system must be configured so that the file permissions, ownership, and group membership of system files and commands match the vendor values. So that's a lot to take in. But basically, every time you install a package on Red Hat or CentOS, which is the free version, it's going to come with a whole bunch of files wrapped up in that package, and they all have standard permissions. And they're going to get installed that way. And normally you would want those files to keep those same permissions and not get changed by any other processes on the box. And if they are changed, then that's kind of an indication that, it's definitely an indication that something else changed them. It could have been the program itself, the package itself, but maybe you have a bad actor on your box, and in a zero trust environment, you just have to assume that bad guys are all over your network anyway, especially a network as big as the Department of Defense, or think of healthcare or auto industry or what have you. So there's a way you can.
Question?
Yep. Yep. Go ahead, Bob.
When you say thank you. I can't read on your screen, but did I hear you say that it should match the vendor? And if so, which vendor? I've usually found most Red Hat package vendors have very loose permissions, so I normally tighten them up.
Right. Yep. So
are they suggesting they be no looser than the vendor, or they want them actually kept at whatever the vendor's looseness is?
This check itself is just checking for well, okay, here. Let me fire up a text editor. I'm using a Macintosh. Sorry. Nice. And of course that's small now, but I can oops. That's a 4, not an or. Oh, come on.
Yeah. In fact,
Right.
I know a lot of Red Hat packages usually want to be run by root with no differentiation of permissions, which means anything gets compromised, everything gets to run as root. Not a good idea in my mind.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So can y'all read that? Maybe
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Let me.
I got a 32-inch monitor. I can read your screen just fine.
Okay. Okay. So the way these checks are laid out is there's check text. So they're going to give you a command like I just put in that text editor. They're going to say verify the file permissions, ownership, and group membership of system files and commands, match the vendor values, and then they give you a command like this, big old command. And this one's kind of interesting because it goes through your entire file system and compares every single file with the permissions that originally came with the package, and then spits them out and says, okay, this is what it. These are all the files that had a difference. So, oh come on, I can't. Okay, all right. I'm cutting that, and I've got a server open here, one of my Pogo plugs. This might take all day to run, but I'm gonna go ahead and paste it in here and probably tear it down. But what? Oh,
Well, you might be able to save time by giving a name to the RPM-VA command instead of letting it use all of them. Just pick one or two packages, and then it shouldn't take long.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I tried to run it. Let me.
That's just for demo purposes, in other words.
Sure. Yeah. Can you tell me what I did wrong here?
Does your Pogo plug run Rel 7?
No. No, not at all. so, and I didn't think about it. I mean, I was trying to, what was it? I was trying to connect to my Amazon Linux instance, and it was, and I was having trouble doing that. So I downshifted to the Pogo plug, and I forgot it's based on Arch. So sorry about that.
Okay,
anyway.
but do it.
Yeah, Bob.
That's good. Yeah, do a which RPM to find out if you've got RPM installed.
Oh, I don't. I guarantee I don't. It's Arch uses Pac-Man. So there you go. If you played with Arch at all, you got to do it. Every Linux distribution has a different way to manage packages, which is kind of maddening, but that's the way it is. RHEL uses RPM, the Red Hat package management, and Ubuntu uses apt or apt or apt-get, apt-get, and PogoPlug uses Arch, so that's Pac-Man. All right. Well, anyway, yeah. So that's not too useful for that. Shoot. But anyway, I can explain it. It'll come out with some. It'll come out with this right here, and I'll put that in the text editor. Dan, turn that down.
I tell you what, Ben, my laptop that I'm streaming with right now is Rel 8.
Oh yeah.
If you'd like, I could.
I'll post it. I'll post the command in the chat, and then it'll it should come out with some decent output. But yeah, where are you? Hold on. Where are you, chat? There you go. Okay. So that
and if it runs too long, you can go ahead.
It's going to.
If it runs too long, you can drop the A and put in a few package names.
It shouldn't run too long if your box is decently fast. And did you take over, Jace? That's good.
I am sharing my screen or my.
Okay, good. Yeah, I see it. Good. Great. Awesome. Yeah, that should work. I put an extra line break in there. Sorry about that.
No problem.
But looks like it took it. So all right. So what this command does is a for I in, and then it has a big command enclosed in this, in a tick mark, that beginning tick mark and ending with the tick mark right before the semicolon. So that is doing an RPM verify that is going through your entire package system and finding the files that are out of whack, or got different permissions or different owner or different group on the file than normally it would have. And then it does a regular expression grep for that MUG right there is the U and the G are for users and groups, and M is looking for, I think it's oh, yep, here we go. Whole bunch. Okay, so there you go. So you get a bunch of output, right? And then you get octal output for the permissions for your, yeah. So that octal output, the 0 means this is an octal number. The 100 means it's a file, and then the 644 are the actual octal representation of the permissions for that file, the opt IBM notes types.rdb. And then root is the owner, and root is also the group. So do an LSL there, Jace. Yep, very good. And we see that the permissions are actually 755. The RWX is the 7. The R-X is a 5, and the other R-X means read and execute for everybody that's not in that group or the actual user itself. And so it's supposed to be 644, and somehow it got changed to 755. And normally 755 is only for directories. So, oh no, but this is a file. It is a file. So this file, that first dash right there, right before the RWX means it's a file, and so its permissions went more permissive from 644 to 755. So being a security conscious person,
it says you can execute it.
Yeah. So you can execute, and normally, you don't want to set the execute bit on files unless you really have to, like it's a real application. So this is the type of thing that you would want to investigate, and this is then you would look at it and you say, oh, IBM Notes is an actual application, and types.rdb. I think that's Ruby database, isn't it, Jace?
That's a heck if I know.
Okay. But anyway, so this is how you would do this, and then of course you can automate this by putting all that stuff into a for loop, and just iterating through there, and writing a little script to iterate through all those things and check what the real permissions are, just like you typed out with that ls-l command, and then compare them to what they're supposed to be up above. So that is that one rel check, and then no kidding, it took me 2 weeks to get this thing figured out, and get the script written so that I could actually output that output right there that you see, and then compare it on the same line with another file that had the real permissions, so that you can see it side by side and just look at them both with the sdiff command, which is a side by side differ. So Yeah.
I noticed if you see the top line I've got there, var log last log is listed twice, and I'm guessing that maybe two different packages have messed with that file. Is that because the first one says that it should be 644 permissions owned by group root. Then it's 664 owned by root with utemp group. I'm guessing I guess it's user group, right?
Yep.
Or is it group user? I'm not.
It's group. No, it's user group.
So what actually messed with this file? You know, what put it down? What package?
I do not know. So my guess is that last log appears in all the yeah, there you go. RPM-QF. Yep. Yeah, so you can use that RPM-QF on that file itself to figure out which package it came from, and then that big long command does a RPM-QL to list. Yep, see that?
All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change from all to setup.
Okay.
You could also add util Linux in there to get them both at once.
Oh, okay. Huh.
So, okay. Yeah, it's still not, we don't know which package each one came from yet. But in the middle of that command, you see where it says do for J in RPM-QF. You could, and then it does a do RPM-QL. So it's that QF finds the package, and then the second command, the RPM-QL, lists all the files that are in that package. So you could do that. Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, so there's last log at the end there.
Yeah, and then the rest of the command just, it's too much output, so the rest of the command just greps for the one you were looking for.
Let's see. Okay, so these are the other files, I guess, right?
In whatever package you just asked for, either util Linux or setup.
Yeah. So I'm not terribly worried since var log last log just is going to change every time someone logs in, right? That's who's last logged in. It's the permissions that I worry about and the ownership. Ben, you still here? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So who's in the UTEP group?
I hear you. We don't hear Ben.
Wondering if that's
Sorry, I'm back.
something of
My battery died on me.
Oh,
You would think a laptop battery would last more than an hour. But anyway.
Yeah, UTEMP's one of the system groups usually used to tighten security. I think UTEMP is utilities temporary. I'm not sure of that. And so it would be used for tools, so that tools not written presumably by the user, and yet at the same time not system administrator tools, would have access to the files in the YouTube group, and that way you're distinguishing them from administrator tools that presumably have greater power, and at the same time allowing users to selectively gain access to certain parts of the system under the control of approved tools.
Yeah, kind of like Wheel.
Yep.
Yeah, last log is
Lesser than Wheel, but yes.
right. I just in terms of it's used for administrative purposes. But yeah, last log's one of those files that I've often left to the mysteries of why is this file showing as 2,000 gigabytes when there's only 1 gigabyte of space in var.
Ben, I'm sorry I asked too many questions about last log and stuff. We got off on a tangent.
That's all right. Yeah, that's fine. So so that's the check text. So now you know. Now you've walked into the cave and you found 1,000 bats in here. How do you clear them out? Let me share my screen again. My screen. Okay, can you see it? Yeah, there we go. All right, so that was the check text. Now there's a fixed text that says, okay, if you found all that stuff and you got problems, then you do the RPM-QF, just like Jace did on the file name. That gives you the package. And then once you have the package, you do a RPM-set U GIDs and do that on the package name. Here, let me copy all the stuff and put it in the text. Text. Where'd you go? Yeah, there we are. Okay. Increase. Okay, so yeah, you find the do a -QF on the file name, RPM-set U GIDs on the package name, and that fixes all of them that it finds. Of course, it might break your box too. You never know what's going to happen, so you want to do a backup before you do any of this stuff. And then to reset the permissions, you just do a RPM set perms on the package name, just like you did above, and that'll change the 644 to 600 or whatever it said it was supposed to be. So that's a pretty good feature. I mean, it tells you what's wrong, and then it gives you the fixed text to fix it. And that check right there was the most of all these 245 things. That was the worst one. Like I said, it took me weeks to figure that out. But the other ones are simple like this. Like here's one where you make sure that the banner that hits the user in the face when they first log in is actually enabled. And you can check it by doing this grep banner message enable, and it should come back with banner message enable equals true. And I'll go ahead and paste that in the chats if you want to see it. Wait, not Slack. Where'd you go, Chrome? All right. Yeah, there we go. So that's just a simple little check, and if it comes back true, then it's what is it? Yeah, if your server has GNOME installed, that this is a check for that. If it doesn't have GNOME installed, then you could just mark it not applicable. And that's another thing. How do you mark this stuff? So, this is. Okay. Why is it showing this as SRG? Oh, okay. So working with this package, I know we only got about 12 minutes left. So this is just the Stig Explorer, but to do an actual checklist, you go to this menu right here, and you say you can open a checklist from a file, or you can create a checklist based on this Stig. So you can go ahead. So let's go ahead and do that. It calls it new checklist and gives you a chance to save the checklist as my first checklist. Row 7. And make sure you separate your file names nicely with underscores so you don't have problems later. And then it creates it for you, and gives you these vulnerability IDs and rule names.
Ben,
yes.
you might want to know your screen isn't visible.
Oh shoot. Stop sharing.
Well, I can see it.
You can see it. Okay. You see the Stig right here that I'm talking about?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Then it might be a problem with your system there, Bob. I'm showing the Stig checklist right now.
No, I see a terminal window. I thought it was
Okay.
Jason's.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm also sharing my terminal that I just ran the command. That.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's fine. That's good.
I can stop sharing.
Yep. So yeah, I just want to make sure that
I now see the Stig.
Yeah. Okay. So check text it has a check text part and a fixed text, and so all you got to do is check it and fix it, and make sure you're telling your users you're doing this, or else you might blow up the box. But if you got time on a Saturday and you have to fix something after hours, and this will, and you got a lot of time. I mean, we're talking 245 checks here on a RHEL 7 box. Some of these are not applicable, but most of them you do have to go through. And there are commercial packages that you can buy to go through all these Stigs and flag the ones that don't automatically pass. So, hopefully you like in the boxes that I checked, like 80% of the checks passed, and then I had leaving me to deal with the other 20. So I thought this would be useful to show y'all. Oh, yeah, right here. You have the option of turning on and off the vulnerability ID. I'm going to turn off the vulnerability ID because it changed from the last time they did this. And I'm going to turn off the rule name, and I'm just going to turn on the Stig ID because the Stig ID did not change. This status column means if you click on it, NR means not reviewed. So they all start out as not reviewed. And if you go through this rule and you say, okay, my stuff is good, so I'm gonna choose not a finding, and that changes it to green. We all like green, and then you can paste the output of your command here that you ran on the server, and then in the comments you just say NF, not a finding, and then you're good. Now, if this one turns out to be the second one turns out to be a finding, you can say, okay, this is open and we have to fix it, and it starts out as a category 2, which is medium level severity, and you put your finding in here and you say, we need to fix this. And then just save it, and so that's it. Pretty simple. if this first one had been open, then it was, and say it was a cat 1. No, it should have come out as a. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. If this one had been open, then it currently starts out as a cat 1 because this is it's an indication that somebody was messing with your system, and you really need to fix this. And if your information assurance guy comes along and sees this, and he knows it's not really a cat 1, it's a cat 2, then he can come along and say, okay, this is a cat 2, and then give a justification. This is not a cat 1 because some reason, reasons, and say, okay.
Well, in this case, a good reason would be you don't want to run everything as root.
Yeah, that's right. So this is fairly useful, fairly manual tool. Pretty manual. I mean, this could take up weeks of your life, just doing one box. But you would want to buy some kind of tool to do most of the checks automatically, and then you deal with the one-offs that showed up. And the automated tool would put the finding details right here, and just say this check failed, and you need to look at it. All right, so that's it. Anybody have any questions? No. Okay, so that's all I have.
What was the URL? Is it the same as the one listed in Wikipedia?
For the public.cyber.mil?
Public.cyber.mil.
Yeah,
that's the one in Wikipedia.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yep. We'll go back to it, and it's right here. Public.cyber.mil/Stigs. But yeah, just click on here, and it'll let you. What? If you want to see where, let's see. Stig tools and viewing guidance.
Come on, do not make me drag them all the way back to
Stig's home automation. Okay, yeah, here we go. Yeah, all these right here. So Stig Viewer right here is that program that I was using to show you how to work with the Stigs. And then if you wanted to see the Stigs sorted by Stig, well, that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting a list of files. Let's go back. Stig Viewer. Oh, okay, here we go. You got a Stig applicability guide, and that teaches you everything how to work with the tools and where to go for the actual Stig for your system. So that's it. I got 3 minutes to go. Any other questions?
Well, thanks, man.
Yeah, hope you got something out of it. So definitely one way to spend a couple Saturdays.
This is definitely something I'm not telling my manager about. I can't really complain. GE has a huge corporate security team, and they send us things daily and weekly, and it's just like, you gotta fix this. And we're like, oh. And then it's a fight because it's we're only the platform team. We're not actually the sysadmins for the server. So who owns it? And then once you figure out who owns it, then you fix it. But no, this is. I'm sure this is.
We get monthly.
Yeah. So this also, I wanted to mention this guy. There's this thing called this public site called media.dau.edu or Defense Acquisition University. And this guy right here, what's his name? Nicholas Chelane, French guy, has put together all these courses, like very short 1-minute videos about, modern tech and container hardening and continuous continuous authority to operate, sidecar, container security stack. Very short videos, minute 24. And so it's kind of interesting that, DoD, which is usually a very staid and conservative, organization, has got a guy like this trying to, push the Department of Defense forward into the container world, and with modern security and all that. So that was another thing I thought y'all might like to see. Media.dau.edu, DevOps Academy. So, all right. Anybody have anything else? No? Okay, thanks for showing up. We need to talk about what we're going to do next month. Robert, you were talking about maybe having something for March.
Right, and that would be on the spectrum allocation plan. That's history and basically why it was created. It was a paper that I presented last week, a short summary, but I thought if people are interested, might be of interest to people in this group as well. Why, for instance, the AM band is exactly 3 times at its top end what it is at smaller end. How history from the Titanic up through television in the 1970s was regulated in order that anybody could use or within constraints could use the air and not interfere too much with their neighbors, despite the treaty requirement that we use sinusoids that are the resonant structure of almost nothing. In other words, politics tried to defy physics, and the clever tricks used to get around that.
So can that be ready for February, or is March more likely?
March is much more unlikely.
Much more likely. Okay. So
February would be extremely difficult.
Okay. Well, we still need a topic for February then. So if somebody has something, you can hit us up on the list. All right, I'm looking at the chat.
Oh, and Daryl had asked if someone could show software RAID.
Oh yeah, that'd be a good one. That would be a good one. Does anybody know?
Is that a competitor to Black Flag?
Linux has a program called MD Atom or MD ADM that is the software RAID equivalent of hardware RAID. As a former, current UC Log member Jim Salter has mentioned more than a few times that if you have a server with hardware RAID, you can almost bet that that RAID card is going to go out on you about 5 years down the road, and then you're going to find out that your hardware RAID card is nowhere, nobody's making it anymore, and nobody has it in stock, and now you're really in a pickle, and you wouldn't be if you just use Linux's software RAID, and accept the tiny performance penalty that it provides, but you get a standard software RAID package that's been tested in about oodles of times, as opposed to the hardware manufacturer's testing program, which may or may not be up to snuff. At least that's been my experience with NetApp. So,
A quick question: is everybody familiar with RAID? What it is?
I doubt it. You want to enlighten us, Bob?
I know what it is, but I can't tell you what each of the numbers mean.
I'm familiar with it.
Okay, I'm at about that level too. But basically, RAID is where you lay down the data on the physical disk in one of several patterns to make it more resistant to the common types of physical errors, or to improve its access speed, or to provide redundancy against loss of data. And essentially, it enhances the forward error correction that's been built into the hardware drives now for a few decades. Wasn't original, such to meet more stringent requirements, usually that a business might have, compared to the over-the-counter, less expensive disks. And usually works by striping the disk, breaking it into sections, and where the sections duplicate the data in other stripes, or where the data is split between the strips with redundancy data, similar to a QR code, so that if data is destroyed in any part of the file, there's very high likelihood that, and up to 100% likelihood, that it's recoverable.
It also depends on the type of RAID and you're using and what kind of failure occurs. So I'm pretty well versed in the different types of hardware RAIDs, but I wouldn't be able to speak on anything. Somebody's echoing like crazy. I wouldn't be able to speak on any kind of software RAID implementation, as I'm not familiar with all the commands and anything.
Well, maybe we can find somebody to talk about that by the next when. What's going to be the date for the February meeting? Oh, Macintosh calendars are just all right.
It would be the 9th of February.
9th? Okay, thank you. So, all right. Well, maybe we can find somebody by then.
Which is incidentally my daughter's birthday. I may bow out that night.
Ah, good man. Okay. Well, if somebody, well, we'll search around for somebody that can do the raid talk.
See if you can contact Jim.
That guy is busy. Let me tell
Yeah.
you. I think he got picked up. Well, he's definitely writing for ours like all the time now. So I'm pretty sure he must have got picked up on, as a salaried employee.
Just before you joined, we were talking about. I hear him on Jupiter Broadcasting a lot too.
Oh yeah, and he's got this great podcast with these 2 other guys called 2.5 Admins.
Yeah, I'm listening to it. It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. Right up there with the that metal blog from what is it? Oxide Computer Corporation, a new startup. So yeah. Okay. Anybody else have anything else they'd like to talk about before we sign off?
Well, since you mentioned podcasts, what's anyone else listening to? I think one of my favorites now is self-hosted.
Self-hosted?
Yeah, it's part of Jupiter Broadcasting. They talk about instead of using cloud anything, bringing it all in-house.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the guys that co-founded Jupiter Broadcasting, he's the one that co-hosts, and he has this not a what do you call a live-in bus? What do you call that? Not a van, mobile
RV.
An RV. Yes,
He lives in an RV.
He lives in an RV.
Yeah.
And his entire infrastructure and everything, including the broadcasting company, is within that RV. And so he can go anywhere, and he's got all of his services. It's really quite amazing to hear about some of the stuff he does. But he's self-hosting everything, if he can help it.
Is he at selfhosted.show?
It probably is.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I went to the .com one, and it was not what I was expecting. But this one looks good. Yeah.
Yeah, that is a pretty good one, Jace. I like it too.
Anyone else? Matt, what are you listening to besides that?
Oh, goodness. There's a whole list of them. It's mostly Jupiter Broadcasting, stuff from DLN. Some of the stuff from Twit. Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, I still listen to Floss Weekly. I still love that show.
I haven't listened to that one in a while.
Keep talking. I'm typing.
Andy, you listen to podcasts?
I do. I've been listening to 2.5 Admins, so that's what I posted in the chat. That's Jim's, and the 2. I presume British guys, but could be Canadian as well, or Australian. Not sure. Yeah. I'm somewhere in between Jim and the self-professed guy who knows nothing relative to this. But yeah, I listened to a couple other things, but they're more Apple or tech in general oriented.
Yeah, I was going to say Command Line Heroes from Red Hat was pretty good.
I love that show.
Yeah,
I subscribe, but I haven't listened to anything yet. But
Yeah,
So with that, it's more of a history show of computer science and Unix and free software and just everything. It's story based, but it's really historical. I really enjoyed that show too. That's a good one.
It reminds me of all the books that I've collected over the years.
All right.
Thank you, Daryl.
I have to confess, I don't listen to any of them, but I will start.
Well, some of us just have a lot of free time, I guess. We're not important like you.
Oh, I was going to tell Bobby. Bobby, try Hack 5 for that.
Oh yeah,
that Hack RF1. I know the guy who does that podcast. It's HAK5. He's the one who developed that that Hacker RF1. He has some interesting. I haven't listened to it in a while, but it's I know he did do that one, and he did the pineapple, which is a fun little thing to play with.
Bobby, you listen to any podcasts?
Bobby don't need no stinking podcast.
May have signed off. Oh, there he is.
And Dad, we haven't heard from you. I don't know if you have a mic or not, but you listen to any podcasts, Dad?
Yeah, but I used to listen to a lot of this to like security now. And,
oh yeah.
There was some stuff. I can't remember the name. Linux for the Rest of Us. I used to listen to that, but now I listen to like a lot of financial podcasts. Trying to catch up on Bitcoin.
I'm kicking myself.
Okay, sorry, my mic was off. I hadn't been listening to podcasts, unfortunately, like him, except comedy ones. I can recommend a few. So I'm going to try listening to some of these hardware ones. Especially thank you for Hack 5. And now I think I lost everybody else's audio.
No, I just muted. Thanks, Daryl.
Yeah, it's called Podnuts. They host a bunch of different open source type program.
You know, I remember hearing about Linux for the Rest of Us and some people saying, but I myself have not heard it, so I'll have to do that.
Oh, yeah, I've tried that one out. That one looks pretty good.
Bobby, there was a comedy podcast that I used to listen to that I can't think of the name of, but it was Paul F. Tompkins, and he did improv. It made me laugh so hard every time I listened to it, but he stopped doing it.
And for decades, I had been listening to audio drama radio broadcasts, which is what they were called before they were called podcasts. Things like the Jack Benny Show, Burns and Allen, was it Producers Theater or something like that? Screen Directors Playhouse. And those you sometimes can also still find online.
Yeah, I found that the listening to comedy or the comedy stations on Spotify or Pandora, if you're driving at night and you can't stay awake, that'll keep you awake. I don't know why. Laughing will wake you up.
That's a good hint. I'm gonna do that from now
Yeah,
on.
I have to go in and work sometimes late at night, and I'm sometimes driving home at 3:00 in the morning, and that helps.
Well, anyway, thank y'all for. Oh, Ben, were you saying something? You need to unmute.
Sorry about that. Took me a while to find the tab. I like that Paul F. Tompkins reference. He's got a tweet on Twitter of this lady crying in an airport, and the caption is "When you voted for a travel ban and then a part of a travel ban."
But I wish I could think of it. But he hosted a podcast that was like I said, it was improv comedy. They would interview a person, usually a comedian, just ask them about their life and whatever. And then they would go into improv and they'd have a scene. And it happened to be about all the things that they talked about that person's life. And it was just hilarious. I wish I could remember what the name of that podcast was, but it was, he stopped doing it, but it was just hilarious. I'm sure it was just exhausting for them to do every week or whatever, but it was just so funny.
No.
Well, I think unless anyone has anything big important, I think I'll call it.
Yeah. Thank you all for attending.
Yeah, appreciate everybody coming in.
Hope everybody's staying safe.
Thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Have a good night.
All right. Talk to y'all later.
Thanks.
Night.
Bye.